A few weeks ago, you voted for me to start repairing the wall above the bread oven because we all want the bread oven to start working. What I've started to do, I've framed in a couple of doorways. So I'll turn this little room up here into a storage room. It'll probably be my compost toilet as well for a while. I'll have that up here. And I've got a little access port so you can access the top of the bread oven. So probably some of that heat coming through there. You know, it's a good place to store things. So while I've prepared, oh, that's lovely. Look at that. I've started to prepare the clay for rebuilding this wall up here because everything done here was clay mortar. So we're reusing what the traditional techniques that we used to make the original wall. And we'll probably do a lime. We've got lime here as well. So all of that to come. But for now, today, let's jump into it. I'll show you how I made these. The first stage is wood selection, and I've pulled out these old timbers, and these are mostly rejects from jobs. I mean, I've got a couple of short little bits that will do for my uprights, and they're a bit curvy, a bit funky. And then I found this is an old brace from a building. I didn't put this in a building. You know, we've got a bit of grain that's kind of sloping off here. A couple of holes where Capricorn have been, which I think looks quite attractive. So that's going to be the top of the doorway, so I have a nice curve. And then there's this that I'll use as a sill. And this is very much an offcut because this is the top of the tree. It's really curvy, really nasty here, and the grain runs out here. So all this at some point, if it was in a building, would probably fail. But I got a little bit of timber here, and the little bit of overhang that I'll have from either side that'll bond into the wall, I'm not really fussed. And to be honest, a little service doorway, you know, it's a place where you can get rid of some of the bits of wood that aren't the best ones on show, the major features in the house. Next thing is to calculate the size of the doorway that we need. Now, I'm going to want about 500 millimeters wide, about that wide. In fact, it's that wide, so enough for shoulders to fit through, you know, if you've got to go in and store stuff in there. I'm going to calculate the height of the door, and I'm going to use the golden ratio to do that. So I'm going to take my calculator, my old school calculator, I kid you not, and I probably still got all the presets from schooling. So I'm going to calculate that, and that comes out, so 500 is my width, and times golden ratio is 1.618, and that comes up at 809. So, you know, that'll do. And I think I did measure this one earlier, so that's my uprights. And actually 809, I don't have much, so I might cheat a little bit and bring that down slightly. So it's close to, but not exactly the golden ratio. But I'm not too fussed because, you know, with the door being slightly higher, the actual physical door kind of being rebaited into this door frame, as will become evident later, it won't make much of a difference. Right, so now I want to orientate my timber. So I've got this one, which I'm happy with. So I'm thinking about how it's going to be seen, and you're always looking at with it in a building. And so, yeah, this face I'm happy with. So this one's on the bottom. It's going to stick out, so I'll have a little lip, and it's quite funky, quite interesting grain. So I'm looking what's nice, what's going to durability straight. This is really straight, which is quite nice. And excuse me. And what's going to be nice to put a tenon into as well. And it's a bit funkier on the bottom there. You know, I think having it that way is going to look quite pretty. So I'm going to put my face on here and my edge on there. And so, yeah, happy with that. And then these two are the uprights. So I'm going to look at those. You know, I've got a bit of sapwood on there, which at some point you always try and think, you know, several hundred years ahead when you make a building. And sapwood, it's likely that that will disappear at some point. So you're trying to avoid that area to be somewhere where you can have rebates and things like that. You know, it's a bit of a character. So I'm looking along it as well. So I'm looking down. You can see it's a bit bent, which is quite nice. And I think the other one is too. And so I might want the doorway. That'll be quite nice like that, a bit rounded. That'll be quite fun. I'm looking at it. You know, you've got a fissure down here because the heart is right next to the edge there, but you know, the other side's got that knot. I'm going to put a rebate in the back side anyway, so I think I'll keep this side as my face. I think that'll look quite nice, but because I've got a fissure, I know this one's sheltered, but if this was outside, if it was going to be like that and this is an outside building, then I probably want that fissure to be up. So if there's any rain, it's protected by eaves and overhang. Any splashback just goes on this plain piece of timber here. So it's not going to go into the wood and potentially cause any rot, you know, 100 years down the line or whatever. So yeah, I'm going to have that one. I'm going to go bore face and edge. So I have those on the outside of the building. So yeah, there's that one. I'll put that way around. And then there's this one. This one's got quite a bit of sapwood on there. That's quite attractive, but I don't, again, I mean, sometimes if you've got a bit of sapwood on one corner, that's ideal if you're going to put a rebate or take that piece of timber out, because you can just get rid of it. This one has no heart in this end, and this one too. So let's have a look. So I'm going to look down at, see, that's bent like a banana. Have that banana inside. But I don't want that because that will rot at some point. So I'm going to flip that around, and I think I'll have, yeah, we sweep out here in the grain, but I don't have much choice. Again, these are all offcuts from jobs, so, you know, put that there. And I'm going to keep these uprights orientated in the way that I'm going to have them. And you can see, actually, when they're touching together, that there's a gap between them, so they bow out a little bit. But that's fine, that adds a bit of character. You know, straight is boring. So I'm going to mark myself a 75mm tenon. Now, this timber here is actually a little bit short for what I want, so I'm just going to reduce this, you know, just reduce the height of the door slightly. So I'm going to go to the end of the timber here, so 75 there. I've actually got, which is just an excuse to, you know, bring this out. This is a T-square, which is a very odd thing. And because these are curved, I'm just going to eyeball it in the middle. Like I say, I'm not that fussed for now. That actually gives me, instead of using a string line, just kind of an eyeballed line. There you go, that's my shoulder. And for my shoulder, I draw a little circle, and that means a partial cut. And this one's pretty much on the limit, so this one I'm just going to mark 75. Of course, I'm not going square off because I know this isn't straight here. For that one, it's X, because I'm going to X it off, cut it all off. Okay, and then I'm going to go up to the other end. I'm going to start with the holes, the mortises. So I've got my peg holes, so I'm going to drill those first, and then I'll do the mortise. I'm going to just let the tip go in. I'm just going to look, make sure I'm pretty close to square along there. Then I'm going to eye down the length of the shaft of the auger and the face, and kind of line those up. And then I'll feel, as I start to go and the worm goes through the other side of the hole, the pressure will release. And I'm not pushing this at all. In fact, if anything, I'm lifting it very slightly because when that bit goes through, it will want to come out naturally. There it is. And that, as you can see, that's left a little hole there. So what I'll do is I'll do the other one quickly. And always try and be methodical if you can. It doesn't always matter, but drill those holes. Keep eyeing up, keep checking. Keep a light pressure. And then it comes out. And once you've done that, you can go around and do all your holes like that. You've got your little hole coming through, and then you can just finish off the hole, and that way it leaves a nice clean hole on both sides so you don't have any breakout. Now it's the time for my mortises. So I'm actually going to mark the ends of the mortise, and it doesn't matter what tool, if I'm using a chain mortiser or doing it by hand like I'll do now. And what you'll notice is I'm actually going a little bit over the edge, and that stops any tear out. You know, it's less important doing it by hand like this than the chain mortiser when you have a chain coming round, which I'll show you in another time, and it can really pull the grain out sometimes. And this grain's a bit funky, so it's not going to do me any harm just to quickly mark the edges of these mortises. And I'm looking at where the grain goes roughly as well, because I don't want to end up starting to split out anywhere. Right, so all I've got to do now is assemble it. So I have put some labels on here. That's where the pirates live, and also the right side, which is this one here. There we go. So I've brought it in here because it's a bit of a flatter space. So I can actually, that one will be going there, I think. Yes. That's nice and tight. Yeah, so I can actually adjust the joints and get it flat. So it sits flat nicely. It's a bit tight there. That's good. Yeah, so basically what I'm going to do now is just mess around and just get that. It's not far off. It's quite interesting actually. So these joints are really close. I can just measure it, see if I'm relatively square, 930, within a couple of mil that way, so I'll just give that a tap. Tapping stick will do. Yeah, that's spot on there. So that's where I want to be, 925. So I just got the same measurement either way. I'm going to keep that flat. That's so close, that's amazing. A bit of a gap down there. So all I'm going to do now is take my saw. I keep a cheapy sharp one for special occasions, and just slide that in the gaps. And what I might do is block that up. So basically all I'm doing is this. You can see where I've got a gap underneath. So I've got a gap underneath. There's quite a big gap, but all I can do now, because this is quite bendy as well, it's not one of my really nice saws that I'm precious about. I can bend it, cut down to the tenon. Just make sure you know where the tenon is, so you don't cut the tenon off. Right, so I've pricked my holes with my offset pricker. I've marked where I'm going to do my chamfers. So now I'm going to knock it apart and drill my holes. Sawdust in there, that's fine. Come on, come on, come on. There we go. Swirl that's out. In fact, before I take it all the way, drill my holes, sighting along just so I make sure it's straight. Oops. Try not to stab your workbench. Same with this one. And if you ever put a hole in the wrong place, which happens sometimes, or if you put your drawer in the wrong direction, you can just use the end of a peg to fill your hole. Use the end of a peg to fill your hole, and then put it back in and do it all over again, but put your peg hole in the right place. Right, this one, move this across. Eek. Right, let's knock that apart. Enough, I'll wobble that up, just so I can see my holes. I'm going to put something underneath there again. I'll take it outside, do my chamfers. So I'm going to do two chamfer stops on here, two different types. So the piece of timber at the bottom, that's going to take a lot of wear. So I'm assuming that, you know, if I do something fancy, it's going to get damaged. So I'll do a really simple chamfer here. The one here on the uprights, I'll do similar to what I've done on the door there. So there's some kind of continuity through the buildings. Although, you know, it's nice to try new things, and being my place as well, I'm going to use it as an opportunity to try lots of different chamfer stops. So there will be lots of difference as we go, but I'll show you how I do these. This one's really simple. So all I'll do is I start on the corner here, and I'm actually starting with my bevel down. When you work with your bevel down, it wants to pick up, and that's exactly the shape I want. Because if you use it with the flat down, you're going in a straight line, which I don't want in this case. So I'm going to start on my corner here, and I'm coming about an inch in. And I'm kind of doing it by eye. You can judge this by yourself, by eye, and it's going to leave a couple of millimeters or an eighth or something like that. Just a little step, just there, just a nice little detail. So now this piece of timber is done, all I just need to do is break the edges, take the arris off. The arris actually is the edge of the timber, that is the arris. So to take the arris off is to do that. Sometimes we'll just say arris the timber, which is really easy. Well, this one I've already marked up. So all I'm going to do is a quick saw cut, and then I'm just going to come around here. So let's try that. So I'm going to start them off. I've got some pegs. These pegs are quite cool, so I tend to collect pegs from where I've worked and using the wood that's available, so you kind of bring a bit of that project with you. And these ones I made when I was in Normandy working on the nave for Notre Dame, so these are quite special. Now pop these up. Yeah. Go. There we go, nice. Happy with that. Pop those in, and before I'll show you in the holes first. Can you see? I'll bring you in. Hopefully you can see through there. You see the peg holes don't line up. Might be clearer on this one. So basically, what's going to happen when I put the pegs in, they're going to pull those joints up tighter. I mean, it's not great shakes. You can see these ones are really tight already. So that. And you can hear the sound change as that gets tighter and tighter. And you'll want to wait till it gets to a dug. You'll feel as well. Yeah, I'm happy with that. That's tight. Let's put these ones in. Let's show you a close-up. And you can see with the pressure that's going on here, you can imagine how much pressure. I mean, these are quite bendy already. You can see how this one, ooh, you can probably see how that curves up through the tenon. And that forms a staple, so it won't come out. And you can also see why you want your tenons to be a certain length, because if they're too short, you know, that's a lot of pressure coming through your tenon, and that's really going to risk splitting it. This is why you have that minimum tenon length. Perfect, happy with that. I've just got some tidying up to do now. I'm just going to check all my rebates lined up, which they do. I've got a little difference here, so I'm just going to tidy that up with the chisel. That was pretty close. Then I'm going to put it in. Right.